supporting growth that touches the sky. Education is a compass that's strong, guiding the way for minds for so long. In the heart of education's domain, together we foster growth and gain. From classrooms to corridors, it's clear. Corporate hands extend year after year, empowering minds to reach new heights. All of us learning where wisdom ignites. Talent and skill echo corporate's call, pointing to education for one and all. Education is a compass that's strong, guiding the way for minds for so long. In the heart of education's domain, together we foster growth and gain. Boardrooms and classrooms are entwined, a promise to nurture, legacy defined, supporting young minds to spread their wings, because in learning we can do many things, yeah. Education is a compass that's strong. Yes it is, yes it is. Guiding the way for minds for so long. In the heart of education's domain. Heart of education's domain. Together we foster growth and gain. Heroes in classrooms guiding through endless possibilities for me and you. Student leaders who inspire and give back will continue to be on the right track. Student leaders, a resounding praise for lighting the path in diverse ways. Leaders of now and leaders to be. Our country thanks you, it's plain to see. Not just teachers, but mentors of soul, nurturing minds to reach all their goals. A path illuminated, the past shows the next generation to bravely grow. Student leaders, a resounding praise for lighting the path in diverse ways. Leaders of now and leaders to be. Our country thanks you, it's plain to see. In their brilliance we find our way, embracing the future, come what may. Intelligence and eloquence say why for the innovations and what they try. Outstanding tech contributions today for strength and creativity. Find a way. In the face of challenges they soared, their impact and legacy adored. Profound impact, all that they share. The boundless reach, a world they repair. With tech inventions, they rise above, pushing the boundaries with a future love. Exceptional products, systems that work, intellectual marvels that are artwork. In the face of challenges they soared, their impact and legacy adored. Profound impact, all that they share. The boundless reach.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. I am Colonel Janice Carroll, Deputy Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force. And you are now going to be attending the session of Empowering Others to Excel, Mastering the Art of Coaching and Team Building. But before I get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping things for you this afternoon. So we will not show slides. This will really be a dialogue between my two esteemed panelists, who I will introduce shortly. But for the front row, if you want to come on up and get closer to us, you can definitely do that. If you have not already had your badge scanned to get credit, make sure you do that as well. So you can get your credits, your CEU and PDH credits. There will be a survey as well following this session. I would say you will find bios posted on the website, but you will not at this point because we are a new panel, a new group. So the old panelists dropped out and we have, again, the new crew here today. So that being the case, I'd like to welcome you, knowing that after our dialogue, you can come up and ask questions. We ask that you come over here and ask questions using the microphone. Although you may have an amazing voice, we ask that you still use the microphone only because we want to make sure it's recorded and those out in virtual land can also hear you. There may also be questions that will come in virtually as well. So that being the case, again, welcome to this session, and I will go ahead and introduce my two esteemed panelists that is here with me today. So today, I will, to my right, I have Quan Hurst, who will talk about herself shortly. She is Chief Operating Officer for Career Communications Group. And to my left, I have Todd Freck, who is a Senior Implementation Manager at the Adaptive Biotech Incorporated. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Todd, and have you introduce yourself first.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much. So, my name is Todd Freck. I have kind of a varied background, many years in industry, but I actually started out in the better of the services, which was the Navy. So a little inter-service rivalry here. I know there's some Army people out here too. So, so I actually started my training in the military. I was FMF Corps. When I was in the military, and then I got out and I worked for large corporations, then developed a consulting company, and now I work in a molecular diagnostics laboratory out in Seattle, Washington. So I have spent decades working in a lot of varied organizations, and not only have had the opportunity to see very, very, very bad leadership, but also worked in some organizations that had incredible leadership. So I want to bring that perspective to you today and talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Todd. Kwan, over to you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say Army, okay? That's the best, okay? All righty.
No, I'm not sure.
Okay, and a little bit of the Air Force. But anyway, yeah, hi everyone. My name is Kwan Hurst, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Career Communications Group. I'm also here with the Women of Color. That's what we do. We're putting on an experience for you, so I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. Also, I'm part of the BEA Stars and Stripes team as well, so you'll see me there if you all attend BEA in February. I'd like to say I started a long time ago with a little bit of a varied kind of a background. I was the person who, once I finished college, it's like anybody that came into an office and had something they couldn't figure out, they would bring it to me. And then they wanted me to show them how to do it, how to use it, how to, navigate business. So I inadvertently kind of moved on to process management from computer information systems, but the two married very well together, because not only did I learn a lot and learn how to translate that into communications that people could understand, I also just became that person who handled the processes and started to help businesses develop strategies and solutions to improve employee operations. So I've worked with a lot of teams, a lot of different levels of teams, from the entry level all the way up to CEOs, and I can say it's been exciting and wonderful. So I'm also a transformational life coach. Oh my goodness, I have 3 children and been married for over 30 years, so I can say that's teamwork at its finest. So thank you.
Okay, well, you have heard from our 2 esteemed colleagues, but before we get started, I would like a show of hands of how many of you in the audience have a mentor. Excellent. And how many of you in the audience have been a part of a winning team? Excellent. So as I introduce myself, Colonel Janice Carroll, Deputy Director for Diversity and Inclusion, I too have been a part of a winning team, and this afternoon, what we're going to talk about here is how, over the course of our leadership journey, have we been a part of developing winning teams, and what are some of those characteristics? And I'm going to go to Todd first to really talk about his journey in developing winning teams, not just good winning teams, but starting from a team that he inherited that was not such a great team. How did you develop that team into a winning team? Todd, over to you.
Sure. Well, I want to start by telling a story that I told Janice earlier today about kind of one of my very first experiences in leadership, learning about leadership. So I said that I was an FMF corpsman. So an FMF corpsman is the equivalent of an Army medic. So we are the medics that go with the Marines. So you'll notice a theme here that whenever you need something, it's the Navy you go to, not the Air Force or the Army. So, so the unit that I had, that I inherited from another corpsman, the gunny in that particular unit, the sergeant that ran the unit, pulled me into his office the first day, and he said, "Hey Doc, listen, the last corpsman didn't work out so well, so I'm going to give you a piece of advice." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Do the PT." And what he meant was that I was to run with the Marines and exercise with the Marines, just like now it wasn't a requirement for the corpsman to do that when we were usually following in a Jeep. But his advice to me was do the PT. And I did. And when the Marines ran, I ran. When the Marines were climbing trees, I climbed a tree. When they were doing whatever they were doing. And that was my very, very first lesson in leadership. And I've always thought about that. And I've always thought whenever I inherit a team or I'm building a team, I always remember, do the PT, which means get in with your team. Do what your team needs. Participate in what the team needs. And that is kind of, I think, the fundamental part of leadership. And so in building teams, and I've built a lot of teams over my career, but in building teams, one of the things that I do is I get in there and learn what they are doing, and I understand what they're doing, and I understand the challenges that they have, so that I can be a leader with them. And I think that's very critical, even when you are inheriting a team, is to learn, what's this team doing? You know, who are your leaders within your team? You know, who can you depend on? Who can you grow? Who can you build? So it's not a complex process, you know, but my suggestion to everybody is do the PT. Air Force doesn't do PT, by the way.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know if Todd is going to survive the panel, as he keeps saying what the Air Force does or does not do. But as Todd indicated, you know, do the PT. From where I sit as a leader, one of the things that I do when developing a winning team is, the first thing is listening. I listen to the team. So getting back to your point about listening and understanding, you listen to the team to see what they have to offer. You learn how to develop the team, and then you lead with the team. And so those are three of my key principles that I actually lead with, and I often call them the 3 L's: listen, learn, and lead. But now we're going to turn it over to Kwan and have her talk about her leadership journey and what she did to develop a winning team.
Well, I have an Army story because he had a Navy story, so I'm going to bring it. Back when I was in basic training, everything we did, everything we learned to do, I did it the best I could do it. And I tried to just, not only, I wasn't doing it for anyone, I was doing it for myself, but I just did the best job ever, everything we had to do. And I remember the drill sergeants came one day and they pulled me aside. They said, you know, you're a really good soldier. They said, but you know what? You'd be excellent if you actually reached back and shared with other people. So you have a whole team here, and several don't know how to do these things, or they're not doing them really well, and you have the knowledge, you have the skill. If only you would help others, maybe you'd be a great soldier. And of course, I was really young, and you know how you just get highly offended when someone says something like that, hurt your feelings, you think about it, and I was just like, you know, am I a selfish person? Being a leader, you cannot be selfish. You have to share your knowledge. You have to share your skill. You have to look at people and help them expand and build and grow and develop, especially if you have it. If you have a skill, you're knowledgeable, you learn things quickly, share it. That's how you build a great winning team, is you help everybody be the absolute best they can be. And if you know something and you can do something very well, reach out and help them, guide them. Sometimes, I mean, there's different things I've had fears about, and I realized that the benefits that I got in learning how to do something was because someone else probably reached back and said, hey, you know, come along, let me help you do that. Let's learn this new thing. You know, you can do it better, faster. I can share my tips and techniques and skills with you. And that made me better. And that's how I've translated that over to the teams that I work with. I try to share knowledge with them, collaborate with them, build trust, and, you know, just help them build up themselves as well.
You know, I think there's a theme here, and this is, I think it's totally kismet that 3 military people are on the panel today. And I think the interesting thing is that our early experience as military is a lot about teamwork. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you've ever had that experience, but you know that, you know, from early on in boot camp, it's like, team, you guys are not going to survive if you don't do it together.
Exactly.
You know, and that translates well, you know, when we get out into, and that's one of the reasons, like, I personally look for military people when I'm hiring people to come into my organization. If I see military in the resume, I know that there's like a basic level of already knowing how to work as a team, you know. And I think a lot of what we've described so far about what we learned and what kind of constructed our early experience in teamwork came from the way we were trained, right?
Oh, very good. So, on that same theme, can you identify 2 key characteristics that you believe a high-performing team should have, and how do you drive that team to success? So again, 2 key characteristics. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, but what are 2 key characteristics that you believe a high-performing team should have?
I think it's okay to have fears, but I think if you push that aside and you do something in spite of your fears, that's one thing that I look for. I like to give people an opportunity to speak up inside of the meetings, to collaborate. So I'm looking for just that spirit of collaboration and no fear, or in spite of your fears, you're still willing to do something. I think that makes a great team member because you have a lot that you can offer, a lot to give, and if you have an opportunity and you just do it in spite of being scared, you share it, something great will come from that.
Okay, so that Nike, just do it, right?
Just do it.
Okay.
Do it.
So Todd, what about you?
So I've seen through my career 2 things that I look for. So one of the things I've done in my career is to go into companies that were launching large projects, and they would bring me in to kind of look at the team before we launched the project. So I would evaluate who are the people on the team. So there are a couple of things that I look for when I do that. One of the first things I look for on the team is who are the leaders. You know, who on the team already has some leadership skills. You know, who's going to step up and who's going to be a good communicator, and who wants to do it. And I'm not saying that everyone has to be, you know, a leader, so to speak. You know, that's not necessarily. It's not necessary. But, you know, I look on a team, there has to be a leader on the team, and I look, is there a good leader here? And if not, a lot of times we'll pull back and reconstitute the team until we have that mix correct, you know, that we know we have a good leader on the team. The other thing that we do that I think is so critical about fostering teamwork is that we listen to everyone on the team. So that kind of goes back to like our military training where we don't leave anyone behind. Right. You know, Kwan was saying, you know, when she was in boot camp, they were saying, hey, Kwan, help your fellow Army people, whatever they're called.
Soldiers.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, they were telling Kwan, they were showing a leadership skill for Kwan. It's like, help the other soldiers, you know. And that's a really critical thing is like, if you know it, you know, pass it on to somebody else. But that communication is critical. Don't leave anyone behind. If someone's struggling, step in. Help them, help pull them forward, you know. And you never know. You might find yourself struggling at some point, and, you know, you need a little help. Yeah.
So Todd, what I heard you talk about in 2 words is really motivate and inspire. So in the essence of coaching and mentoring, how do you, Kwan, help motivate others to achieve the element of success?
Let's see. We have a really dynamic team that I'm working with right now, and everybody has just certain skill sets and things like that. I think as a leader, you have to look and see and pay attention to what everyone's skills are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and help to foster that, help to just encourage that. Sometimes you may have someone who does not like public speaking, and you have someone who does like public speaking. It's okay to challenge everyone, but sometimes when you're working with a team, just listen to them. You need a public speaker. Ask the person who likes public speaking. The other person, encourage them to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, but don't just throw them into something and tell them swim, because you want the best for your team, and not everybody does well with just tossing them in the water. sometimes it's okay, and that is perfectly fine, because I've seen many of our team members build and grow slowly into an amazing leaders themselves, but it took time, but they got there. And so it's just paying attention, watching them and learning your people. Be the person that you'd want looking out for you.
Oh, thank you for that. Todd, anything to add on that?
I would say there's something really, really simple that we can do, and that we sometimes, when things get really busy, we forget, and that's recognition. Just simply recognizing somebody did a good job, even if it's just to like send them a quick message and went, that was incredible, thank you, and I've made that kind of like an important part of my day, because I work remotely. My teams are all over the United States. I don't necessarily see them in the office every day, and I make a point that if somebody does a good job, not only just to maybe message them that, hey, that was great, but I will take the big step and call them on the phone, and actually, I will actually talk to them and say, hey, that was incredible. So that's kind of like, yes, you did a good job, and I don't try to go overboard with it. The other thing, though, is if someone is not performing, handling that in a sensitive and mature way, and I'll be the first to admit I might have a little bit of a temper, and so I might, get irritated that somebody took something that I thought was like really simple, and I was like, really? And I would, and I just kind of like look at it and go, come on, and stop, Todd, think about it for a second, and then coach that person into the position that they need to be in, rather than just blow up at them and say, well, you screwed that up. What else are you going to screw up this week? Look at it, work with them a little bit, and it takes a little bit of extra time. That's to sit down with them. Okay, did you maybe not understand what I was asking? Did I ask something that you weren't prepared to do? And then work with them and give them the opportunity to get back into it and achieve, so that they get that phone call from me going, yo, dude, that was great.
Thank you, Todd. So on that same note, so as I heard you talk about someone not understanding the ask based on how the task was put, how they interpreted the task, being that we have 5 generations in the workplace, you talked about how to motivate their fear, the essence of fear. So in the workplace today, there are so many different levels of how individuals receive information, articulate information, and then that element of willingness. Some individuals only want to sit behind the computer and don't want to speak. Some individuals want to be the only ones. How do you balance motivating the different levels of generations that you currently have in your workplace? Either one of you can go first.
I like a little bit of cross-training. I think that's good for everybody, and it does help. Sometimes I think some of the people that we work with now, and several in the past that I've worked with, it was just a simple thing that they just didn't know how to do something, so that was messing with their confidence level. So we would do some cross-training and kind of give everyone an opportunity to learn, whether it was computer skills, whether it was different things, workplace related, just how to handle certain things, business related. But you would just kind of help them at least learn what it is, encourage it, and give them a chance just to show what they could do. And sometimes you do get varying situations. Like you said, you may get a little bit of low quality things back, or things where you just can't give them a thumbs up and an attaboy, and because you just don't want them to walk out into the real world and find out that that was terrible and they should have done a better job. So I do look out for them that way. I'm not going to give someone credit when they haven't done something, but I'm going to always encourage and cross-train to help them learn little tiny skills that they can benefit from and increase their level of resilience.
Okay, thank you. Todd, anything on that?
I will just be the first to say that I give credit to my grandson for anything he does. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's good or bad. That child does no wrong. I think that's a good point, but especially the 5 generations thing. So I'm 66 years old. My generation, we called people on the phone. Have y'all noticed that everybody else on the planet is only texting now? It drives me. I will call my grandchildren and I will say, call me, I have a question. And I will get a text back. And I said, did I ask you to text me back? So one of the things that you have to do as a manager and as a leader within your organization is you need to understand how the different generations are interacting and how they work. So I'll tell you a little story about a situation I had with a young engineer, brand new on my team. We had a client, and the system that we were implementing at the client went down in the middle of the day, you know, which is not a good thing. I work in healthcare, and you never want things in healthcare to go wrong. So I asked this young engineer, I said, hey, reach out to the client and ask them these couple of questions so we can see what's going on and we can get this system back up. And I didn't hear anything from him for about an hour. And then I called him up and I went, hey, what's going on with that system? He goes, well, I emailed them and they didn't respond. And I went, oh, no, baby. I said, no, you need to give them a call. Call them on the phone. You got a phone, right? So he called. He got voicemail, but he didn't leave a message.
That's the generational thing, Tom.
Yeah. So it was like a total and complete, okay, I initially thought, oh, okay, there's something wrong with this one. But it wasn't. It's that whole generation that they didn't grow up the way I grew up, calling everyone on the planet on the phone, you know? And part of it is understanding and being clear. So now with my team, as part of our orientation, is like, system is down, here's the SOP. You call them on the phone. You make sure you get someone and that they know we're working on it and things like that. It's just like things that we don't necessarily, I haven't ever had in the past, had to explain something to, we have to explain now. So it's definitely a different management style with generations, absolutely.
So Todd, on that note, I often say that there is a huge thing, it's called assumptions, and you assume that that individual knew exactly the how-to, but without the training, and as we often refer to it as intent. What is the intent? Where are the SOPs, and how do they know? And so going back to that same point, as you said, Quan, about pulling that person in that is quiet, how did you as a leader get someone to come in to the fold and truly become their self through the notion of making them feel included by being a mentor?
Well, a lot of the in the past, a lot of the people that I would work with and so on, every now and again you do get a little pushback because it's not something they want to do or think that they like to do. So I always try and listen carefully because sometimes that's not their bag, okay? That's just not something they're interested in. And we don't necessarily need to push everyone in every way into everything. But there are times when you notice someone has certain skills, they have certain talents. You may be able to see ahead, really far ahead, where they could go with that, with just the right push, just the right mentorship, and you kind of encourage them in stages. Because like Todd was saying, some things we see and we expect simply because that's just the nature of the way we were taught and how we learn things. We expect everyone to do it that way and to just know intuitively what to do. That's not the case. So every now and again, I do like to kind of just guide them along. I guess that's a good word, is kind of just share with them the things and possibilities. And then I do encourage them, tell them, like, this is something, you have a natural talent for, a natural skill. You seem to really understand this, and I think it would be great if you shared it this way or you learned this next thing. It's something I think is pretty powerful for you. And I've gotten a lot of positive responses that way, where they're like, you think so? Yeah, I do. You've got that. And they take that next step. So I think it's just watching and listening and making sure that I'm not projecting my own interest on them and helping them to see their best selves.
Wow, thank you for that. So really it's about coaching, right? Getting them to understand and be confident in who they are. Todd, anything on that?
I can only say that early in my career, that happened for me, which I think it was just incredible. Someone recognized that I could be kind of pointed in a direction and be better. And I think that's just something that we owe people as leaders in our organization, is to recognize that talent, recognize where they're struggling, but also recognize people who have that talent and recognize where, we could help people get in the organization. And I think you'll be surprised sometimes about, with just a little bit of coaching and guidance, how some people will just absolutely bloom into incredible leaders themselves.
Wow, thank you. So there's a few more things we will add, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. You guys seem like you have a lot on your mind. So one of the things that is here is, how do you cultivate mentoring up versus down? So we often talk about mentoring those that are subordinates, but how do you mentor a leader that joins the team but doesn't have the skills to be the leader of the team? Todd, over to you.
Get off my team.
So Todd, I know that we talked about this before we started, but as you would go out and help companies where leadership was not necessarily clear, how did you help them get the company to where they needed to go?
So when you start working in an organization, there's one thing that you learn pretty quickly, is that there are two directions that you manage in. So you manage up and you manage down, right? And it's just as important that you manage up and make sure that there are expectations set correctly above you, as well as expectations set below you. And I think that's one of the things you're talking about, is that, you want to make sure that the leadership within your organization knows what's going on, but also knows what's reasonable and what can be done in an organization. And so I think my job as a program manager in a company that's growing quickly and is, rolling out a lot of products really, really quickly, one of my jobs is to make sure that the guys that above me know what we are capable of, what my team is capable of, and that we don't get out over our skis, because, you get out over your skis, what happens? You fall in your face, And one of the things that I did as a consultant was to go into companies and do assessments of teams, and then go back to the management team and said, this is not your day to launch. You need to stop and think about it, because leadership in a team is critical for that team to be successful.
Thank you for that. So anything you want to add on that, Kwan?
I'll just say sometimes it's a little difficult to kind of mentor up, but I know that there's a role that I found myself in not too long ago, where I had to assist a team, in essence, lead a team where they were all experts at what they did. So I let them know right away, is when we're working together on this, let me know how I can help them. I learned what I needed to learn, but more importantly, I make sure that they feel valued and respected all along, because I never want to walk into a situation, or I think it's very bad if a leader walks into a situation and doesn't have enough information, a good understanding of an organization, and they come in intending to change directions and lead people without understanding who they're even working with. So I would say that that's the one thing that I would do leading up and working with leaders, is just encouraging them to learn the people you're working with, encourage them, And just understand you may be working with some major leaders already. You're working with people who are talented. They know their jobs. Treat those people that way. Make sure that they understand how important they are. And you will find yourself being a successful leader simply because they trust you.
The element of trust, absolutely. Todd, anything to add on the element of trusting your team?
Well, you know, as a manager in a technical environment, there's no way I can know as much as my team knows. I have highly trained experts on my team. I understand what they do and I understand the process, but can I go to, my HL7 manager and, tell him specifically how to configure something? No, I can't. So, as a manager, I see the big picture, but I've got to understand that my team are the experts, and I really need to take that position, whenever I'm working with them, is listen to what they have to say and have faith that the team I've built is going to head us in the right direction, unless they need to talk on the phone.
I love the phone, Cindy. I love the phone. So unless, Kwan, you want to add, let's toss it over to the audience for some questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. Who has the first question for this esteemed panel? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Nikisha Ming, and I was wondering, how do you maintain a positive work environment when you have a negative person on your team, and how do you coach through it?
Okay. Todd, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I don't know why they're pointing at me and laughing. So let's talk about how that impacts your team. Having a negative person can really impact the whole performance of the team. It's just not that one person. So I do a couple of things. One of the things I do is I will do have one-to-one conversations with them about specific behaviors that I've observed, and then ask them what's going on. Why are you feeling this way? What's going on? Explain to me, and find out if it's a frustration, what's the frustration? If they're angry about something, what are they angry about? And do what you can. And a lot of times that will help kind of open a dialogue, and you have a conversation with them and at least can address what's causing the problem. But I will say this, not everyone is open to that kind of conversation and may find it difficult to get over whatever is bothering them, or maybe that's just kind of their attitude, in general. In high performance teams, you manage those people off your team, because you want to preserve your team's performance, especially high performance teams. In STEM fields, we move fast, and we have a lot going on. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility. So work with them, see if you can figure out what the problem is, have an open conversation with them. If necessary, involve HR, in the conversation, if it goes to that, and if it's just not going to happen and they're not going to come around, then unfortunately, I think you have to manage them off your team.
Okay. Anything to add on that, Kwan?
No.
So what I would offer is, as Todd just indicated, not necessarily manage them off the team, but it can happen. Try to figure out what's the core of that negative energy. Why are they negative? Is it something someone said? Is it something that they misunderstood? What's driving that energy? And again, if they're not willing to come together and understand that they're part of a bigger team, then yes, it is about, let's see what we can do to help you leave this organization if you're just not happy. Thank you for the question. Anyone else in the audience? Yes, ma'am. Can I stop with you, or? If you could please use the mic. Thank you.
Hi, Claire, and it's actually a follow-up question based on your response. I am curious, can you can you give some constructive, helpful ways you could manage someone off a project? So if I'm leading a project internal, and it's not so much working with HR, but it's more of I have options of other resources I could bring in, a switcheroo. What techniques, starting from the conversation you have either with that person or even with the project team as well?
You're speaking specifically on the point at which you go, I need to manage somebody off a team?
Right.
How to work on that? So there are a couple of ways to do that. One of the ways I've done it in the past, and you know, it's a successful technique for doing it, but opening the conversation with whoever you're working with by asking, do you want to be here? And I've had those conversations. I had a really high performing engineer on a team that I ran a couple of years ago that just started to develop a really bad attitude, just a really, really bad attitude. And I tried sitting him down and going, all right, what's the problem here? You know, is there something going on in your personal life? Is there something, you know, just help me understand why your attitude. And he was really causing problems with the rest of the team with just his attitude and the fact that he wasn't keeping up with his level of work, you know, and it was pushing work onto other people, and it was starting to really impact the team. I finally just brought him in and I went, do you want to be here? And that was just that opening conversation with him, and I was really surprised. He looked at me and said, no. You know? So sometimes we kind of dance around that conversation a little bit. You know, we're not, you know, we try to figure out, well, what do I need to do to, like, save this person, or, you know, what do I do to make them happier and stuff like that. At some point, you know, just have the open conversation with them and say, do you want to be here? And if you don't want to be here, what do you want to do next? What can I do to help you get to your next spot?
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say, sometimes people just want you to ask so they can say, you know, you're right, I don't want to be here. But they're not willing to bring it to you. You bring it to them, and then the dialogue starts that way. They are afraid, that fear that Quan talked about earlier, the fear of coming to you and disappointing you, or you as a leader, they don't want to do that. So they want it to be the reverse, where you bring it up, and then they're able to articulate why, whatever the reason may be, behavior, or just they're just not happy in that position. So sometimes it is they want you to bring them to the table and have a conversation, and then they're willing to talk.
Yeah, and definitely don't let it linger. I don't like to extend the time. If you see someone kind of going slowly over the cliff and they're going down and it's bringing the rest of your team down, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the team who may be positive. You want to keep that positive momentum, but it's okay to go in. If you see someone having an issue, go ahead and take care of it early. Nip it in the bud early. Sit them down and, like Todd and, you know, the Colonel said, you know, ask them, so, do you want to be here? Just be upfront. Do you like it here? What's causing the problem? Let's see if we can come to a resolution. Because sometimes it's all they need is that little bit of a push to either turn on and get it right or remove themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, about not letting something linger, right? Sometimes it's easy to say, well, maybe it'll get better, right? And especially if you have a high-performing team and you have objectives that need to be met, right? Especially in a short time frame, you can't let something linger. It's good to address it. Yeah, appreciate that.
And I will add that everyone is watching that one individual that may be causing the issue. They're watching to see what the leader of the organization will do. And watching so much so, they may say, well, if they're okay allowing them to do that, well, let me do it too. And then that is that cascading effect across your entire team. So the lingering part is extremely, extremely important. But the other part is to, let's go ahead and correct that, because everyone on the team is watching to see what the leader will do.
Yeah. More pressure on the leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leadership is not easy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi, guys. My
Hello.
name is Caitlin Richardson, and I'm currently a college student. I am not in a leadership position, but I did hear you guys say that you are leaders of subordinates as well. So my question is, as a subordinate, how do you come to your leader to talk about how they're running things as far as what's going on in the company? Because if you're talking to your other peers and they feel like things aren't going well with their leadership, and the last thing you want to do is to offend or disrespect them, especially with their credentials and how much they worked. So how would you want a subordinate to come to you as a leader if you don't, if things aren't going so well, how you're running things?
Well, I'll say, I'm the type that I don't like to find out that we have holes in the ship and then we're getting ready to go down. And you saw people plucking holes in the ship behind there, and I want to know. But that's me. And sometimes you're going to be in situations where you have a leader who wants to know when things are going wrong. They want a chance to make things run smoothly. Then you may be in a situation where you have a leader who they're running the ship how they want to run it, and they really don't care, and you feel stuck. You feel frustrated and stuck. So I would say just be as honest as you can. Without you're not going in to offend them in any capacity, but you're seeing things when you're close with the other employees that maybe the leader doesn't see. And you want to make sure that the company thrives. So sometimes it's good to kind of share when you see something that's going awry, that the leader is hurting the employees. You do want to share that in a way to get them to understand that this is because you want the company to do well, that you're seeing areas where there can be improvement for profitability, bottom line. I mean, things that are positive. So that's the way I would kind of approach it. So I'm sure we're going to get some varying.
So Todd will go next, and then I'll follow. Over to you, Todd.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and I think it's an important thing to do in an organization, to feel open. And I think as leaders, you have to foster an environment where people will feel comfortable coming to you and saying, that thing that you said for us to do last week, it ain't working, And I think it's important, as a good leader will always want to hear that from you. And I'm going to put in a plug for this, for everybody. If you are working in an organization and you don't feel that openness, and you don't feel that you are respected enough that you can come in and say, hey, listen, I'm not sure this is going right, here's my opinion. If you don't feel that that's probably an organization that's not going to thrive anyway. And that you, as someone who has some, who cares about an organization enough to want to speak up for that, you belong in an organization that wants to hear that from you. So if you ever get into a situation where, you go in and they went, well, we don't hear that, that's your cue. That right there, that's a sign, for you to say, oh, okay,
Thank you.
So the thing I would add is when you do provide feedback, be very specific. Don't talk in generalities, and don't make it about the person. Make sure it's specific about a policy or process or something that you've seen. So be very deliberate in the feedback, because if you make it a personal thing about you or about them, or the team said, make it about how you feel and not about the team. Don't go and be the spokesperson, as Todd just mentioned. You just don't know how people are willing to take the feedback and input. If leaders come into organizations and they say, let me know what you think, tell me how you feel, they may say, email me, they may say, get on my calendar, but the openness is what's important, and the willingness for them to receive the feedback and do something with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say, once I had a boss who he did the opening company meeting, and he told everyone in the company, he says, my door is always open to you. If you have any issues, I don't care how small it is or how big it is, come to my door, bring it to me. And everybody kind of sat up and kind of leaned forward because they're like, okay, this is new, this is different. He says, however, when you come to my door, I want you to have 3 solutions to whatever the problem is, written out, all developed. I want it sourced, and I want you to show how profitable it will be for the company. So bring that to me, and I will look at it. I don't care what the problem is. And I could see almost everybody sit back like, oh. However, I did have a problem. I did bring 3 solutions. I sourced them. It was very well written, and I got exactly what I asked for the change. So he was someone that I very well respected, but he made it so that everybody was more involved in the company. You felt like you were part of it because his door was open. He just gave you some very, very specific parameters. So I loved it, though.
What I would call that is don't just take problems to a leader, also have solutions. You may not have to have them sourced out in, a 5-year plan, but if you bring something to a leader, have some recommendations and throw it out there. It could very well be they had not thought of that. Again, that 5 generations in the workplace, it does matter. So when you do bring a problem, bring a solution or some ideas about how you would help them fix the problem. I offer that as well. Todd, anything?
No, I think those are incredible ideas, and I think always walk through the door with a solution. That's what I want to hear, and I don't want to just hear the problem that we're having. You're the expert. Tell me what you think we should do to fix it. Absolutely. Good, excellent point. Yeah.
Anyone else with a question? Yes, ma'am.
How do you motivate a team that's on the verge of burnout?
Well, sometimes, a lot of high-performing teams, that is probably the state that most of them stay in, is like on that little edge of burnout. But I will say, just kind of encourage some things like taking some time off, making sure that everybody kind of has a little bit of whatever their vacation status is and that they do it. Make sure you're paying attention to the project workload, because if you've got everything requires 10 to 12-hour work days, that's a problem. Pay attention and kind of pull back and see where you can either increase your resources or change the way some of the things are done so that not everybody is out there 24/7 working, because you're going to reach burnout pretty quickly. And just encourage everyone to pay attention to their own signs, and I do it a lot. Sometimes I may work a little bit extra, but then I do have moments where I stop and say, let me remind myself, I'm just one person.
I would say boundaries. So in my current role, and I even have one of my teammates here, I often say and remind them that because we're in an era that you're teleworking, or we have phones that we email on, text on, stop your duty day at that appointed time. And if it's important enough, I will call you. And I make sure that is a point of reference, because if I interrupt your downtime, you're a high-performing team that could easily now cause you to work 10, 12, 14-hour days. So over the course of a weekend, you should not be receiving an email from your leadership. And as the leader, I offer, unless it's something you really need, you should call them. Otherwise, allow it to wait until that duty day, because boundaries are very important. If you are emailing someone or calling them after the appointed time and it's not an emergency, you're actually taking time from them and their family. Whether they're married or single, that's their family time. So again, wearing the uniform, a lot of individuals say, well, you're working 24/7. No, that doesn't mean that. That means that at a moment notice, we could be called in to go do something. But as a leader, and I've led multiple organizations, I will not email my team past a certain time. I also caveat that and let them know, if you need something from me, I am reachable, unless I'm on leave. So again, I establish boundaries early, early and often, and you remind people, because individuals could easily get into the habit of, oh, let me just do this one email. And that one email turns into 10 emails. And again, it's because it's just that ongoing cycle of work, work, work. But you have to take a knee, and I put down, the burnout, let's take a knee. And so I often say, let's do a strategic pause to see what we're really working on. And if you're working on something that's not part of the strategic plan and it's not an end goal, perhaps we should not be working on that project or that task. So that's how I currently and previously have actually made sure that my team that is on the verge, as you so stated, of burnout, or just working, decide to let's scale back. Anything to add?
Part of that, we talked about managing up. Part of that is managing up. So if you have a team that's on the verge of burnout, I think the question is, how did they get there? And in managing up, one of the things that I think the part of the communication, and your leadership will understand this, is like, if we burn out these people and they leave, what's the cost to our organization to get us back to the point where we're productive again? You put it in the terms of the time, finding the people, if you can find the people, training the people, their experience within your organization, all of that. I like to think of it sometimes as like, if you owned a $50,000 sports car, would you run it without oil? No. You absolutely wouldn't. So your team is your $50,000 sports car, and if you abuse it, you run it without oil, or you let your grandkids eat candy in it and all that kind of, you're just. They do. On my $50,000, they can. It's absolutely okay. If you abuse that team and burn it out, then you're wasting a corporate resource. And so the question then becomes, why are we at this point? Why are we at risk of burning this team out? And then I need to manage up and make sure that they understand, if we burn out this team, well, we've just, this is $50,000 that we just, blew out the door, So here's my Lamborghini with a lollipop on the seat type thing. So, there's a huge cost to an organization for doing that.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have any questions in virtual land? No questions in virtual land. Okay, Todd, over to you.
I want to just kind of throw out a question that I think is an important part of leadership. I mean, we talked about what happens, how do we manage a team that's close to burnout? How many of you specifically design time with your teams to celebrate wins and successes? Yeah? And that's an incredible and a very important thing. And it's one of the things, and this is going to sound dumb, but you all already know that. So one of the things that the military did, and I think both of you have had this experience, one of the things the military did that, it sounds kind of silly and juvenile, but we loved it, is that you would get battle flags, or you would get unit recognition, So like on the carrier I was on, we had battle flags on our carrier that we won for doing things. Did I get one individually? No. But did it appear on my carrier? Yeah, absolutely. I was like one of 5,000 people on that carrier. I was proud of that. You know what I mean? Celebrate the successes of the team as much as you celebrate anything else, and make sure you take a pause. You said you were talking about taking a knee.
Take a knee.
Take a pause for a minute. If you guys have delivered something incredible, stop and recognize the team and do something, make a battle flag for them. I did it in a company that I worked with. We actually had banners that we hung up in customer service that recognized, goals for customer service, things that they had achieved, and everybody in the company loved that stuff, It was like, it really made a lot of difference because it celebrated the success. So like when we had a big release of new software and customer service got trained, and they were out there, you know, dealing with all the new customers and the new software and the new issues and things like that, they got a battle flag. You know what I mean? No, we didn't call it a battle flag. We just called it a banner, but it was a battle flag.
No, thank you. So again, sharing successes, right? So it's really about valuing those that work with you, for you. And so on that note, anyone have a question about valuing your teammates? You guys are way too quiet. I think we must be the last thing before it's time to get ready for the next event. Quan, anything?
I think I really like having to think about that.
Okay, I will go. So what I offer is sharing successes and owning failures. As a leader, the leader owns the failure. What do I mean by that? If you have a young teammate or a seasoned teammate that makes a mistake, you own it as the leader. You take that as a teaching moment. You take it as a teaching moment because perhaps it goes back to what Todd mentioned earlier. There's a notion that that young teammate knew what to do. There was an assumption. So again, we often say you share successes in public and you own the failures in more of a one-on-one to provide feedback. And I think that's another element of leadership, coaching, and mentoring as well.
I think you said it earlier, and I think it's very important to restate, is that leadership is hard. It's really, really hard. And if you're a leader, and also, you know, in a team that is a high performance team, a high pressure team, you know, it becomes even more difficult. And you're absolutely right. You know, the team wins, but the failures are always going to be your responsibility. You know, and that's just the way. You know, that's the way
That's what
leadership
leadership's
is.
about, right?
And that's why not everybody, and I think this is an important thing to say, not everybody wants to be a leader, you know, and not everybody. I think people have characteristics of leadership that can be, that, you know, you can find a mentor and you can develop and people can become leaders if they want to, but not everybody wants to. And I don't think everybody's like good at it. I've worked at a couple of companies where, you know, our CEOs were, you know, you kind of looked at it and went, really? What did your mama do to you? You know, they just weren't really there. I mean, they got there for some strange reason. They weren't really the leaders that they needed to be able to lead that particular organization. And that, you know, and that can be difficult for organizations.
You know, sometimes I think in a lot of organizations, or I think it's just the cultural times that we're in, it's a little bit of a loss for the respect of the different roles that we're in. Whether you're a leader, whether you're one of the employees that just kind of makes things happen every day, both of those are important. I think all levels are important, and sometimes that lack of respect for what each person brings to an organization. And I tell you, these right leaders have it hard sometimes. You have things, responsibilities are on your shoulders that, you know, people that just come in every day and, you know, they get to leave right on time and they just walk out. They don't have to worry so much. I kind of respect both roles. It's like respecting the garbage man. It may not be the job you want to do, but you are darn glad that that person does it. You are clapping every time he drives up on that Tuesday and picks up your trash. You're like, yes, I didn't have to do that. So it's just a simple respect for whether the person's role is at the top, at the top or at the bottom. And just keep in mind that he's right. Sometimes not everybody wants to be in that leadership position. They really don't. They don't want to have that on their shoulders. They don't want to have to try and make adjustments or you know, adjust their home and work life and not bring things from work to home and stress. They just want to walk out of that door and go home, enjoy, and come back and clock in the next day and get to work. And I respect that. I respect it if that's what you want to do. And I just say respect goes both ways, just respect up and respect down. And I think once we kind of get back to that a little bit more, we'll start to have a little bit more of a balanced, comfortable workplace.
Okay. All right. Audience, anyone? We are not quite at our finishing time, but there are no further questions in the audience. I do believe that they're ready to leave. So, I don't know the proper protocol as I'm looking at the back of the room that is really the one that orchestrates all this. And so what I would offer, if there are no further questions online or in the audience, I would like to thank everyone for coming this afternoon. Thank you for the questions. And I would like to challenge each and every one of you to motivate, inspire, and challenge up, challenge down, challenge lateral, and become a mentor and a coach. Thank you.